All right, what is going on, my friends? I put up a community post asking you guys for what you wanted to see in terms of videos because I am not a creative guy myself, and I would rather just ask. And there was a question generally asking about the implementation of GPP work, how I go about it, so on and so forth. So first and foremost, we are going to establish a working definition for what is GPP work. GPP stands for General Physical Preparedness, and this is going to vary depending on where you're getting your information from. I'm not going to tell you guys that this is the end-all, be-all definition of GPP work. I'm just going to give you guys the working definition that I utilize for myself and my athletes, and that would be that we have our specific training for a weightlifter. It's the snatch and the clean and jerk, and its close variations. If we are a strongman, it's the events in this upcoming show and their close variations. And if we're a powerlifter, it's the squat, bench, and deadlift and their close variations. So the work we are doing that is directly resulting in getting better at whatever our primary objective is. That is our primary training. Doing those in adequate frequencies, volumes, and intensities. That is our specific training, and our GPP work is the stuff outside of that. So stuff that's a little bit more removed from that, looks a little bit less like what we're trying to get good at. And the concept behind it is, okay, yes, this isn't specific training, but by doing this exercise, this training, we are going to set ourselves up for more future success within our specific training. So basically it's stuff we are doing right now that we feel when we come back in next week, having done this, our main work that is driving our progression will go better because of it. And I generally will put the kind of GPP work that I like to prescribe into two categories. If you've listened to a lot of people, you've probably heard about, oh, strongman for GPP or sleds for GPP, or oh, your bodybuilding is by definition GPP work. And those are all perfectly valid perspectives. My perspective personally is that our GPP work kind of comes down into two categories. And to explain the first category, I have to kind of spin a cool little narrative for you guys. So especially in strength sports, but in strength training in general, we have two games we can play. The first game is you have the machine that you are currently operating, roughly this amount of muscle mass, so on and so forth. And by maximizing our technical and neural efficiency, we can lift more and more weight that way. If you look at someone who's in a lighter weight class, for example, guys who are leaner, they've kind of filled out their weight class with nothing but muscle. They're probably having to make a weight cut to the weight class. Putting on any meaningful amount of hypertrophy is not really going to be a viable strategy for getting better. Their training generally ends up looking a little bit higher frequency. So we're maybe squatting 3 days a week, deadlifting 3 days a week, benching 4 days a week, in the case of a lot of higher level natural athletes who are at the upper ends of their weight class in terms of the amount of muscle they're going to be able to carry. So we're getting really, really good at mechanical, but also like our ability to output force still, but more of the neural pathway, our ability to output force and just maximizing those little 1% marginal gains and getting really good at displaying what we've built. And then on the other side of the coin, right, we have the idea of building a bigger machine. So one, we have this machine and we're getting really good at using it to its utmost capacity. But the other side of training, whether you want to call it base building, I would define this as GPP work, is going to be coming in with a bigger machine. If you are a newer athlete and you have tons of muscle to gain, this is going to be a big component of your training. If you're someone who plans to go up weight classes with time, big component of your training. Or if you're just someone in a heavier weight class where your ability to gain muscle is kind of doesn't necessarily have a cap on it, there's going to be a big component of your training, and that is the work you're going to do to hypertrophy the primary movers. We know that the cross-sectional area of your primary movers is one of the biggest predictors of strength in the squat, bench, and deadlift. So some people could argue that this isn't even general physical preparedness. This is pretty specific training to get better at the squat, bench, and deadlift. It's not that general because it's a pretty direct means to an end. I would say that because we're doing motions a lot of the time for our bodybuilding work that are a little bit further away, I would call this our GPP work. So whatever bodybuilding split, whatever body part split you have underlying your strength training for your hypertrophy training, I would call that to be part of your GPP, and it's a very important part. If we can put on a substantial amount of muscle to our pecs, delts, and triceps, more than likely, just as is the purpose of GPP in my mind, our next time we go through a training cycle of bench pressing with adequate volumes, frequencies, and intensities, it's going to go quite well having put on that additional hypertrophy. So building a bigger machine, operating a bigger machine is going to be a big part of our GPP work, and it's the bodybuilding work that's associated with that I would call, let's say, probably more than half of our GPP work. That's the majority of our GPP work. But the other category of thing that I would call GPP work, if we're saying, okay, hey, we're trying to train physical qualities that are going to set us up for greater success when we go to do our specific training. Well, hypertrophy is the obvious one. What other physical qualities might we be looking for to maximize when we go turn around and do specific training? And I would say that work capacity also falls into that category. If you have a high enough work capacity, you are directly going to be able to do either more bodybuilding work and drive progression by that means, or you're going to be able to do more specific work and drive progression by that means. If you're in better shape, it might lead to you being able to squat that one extra time per week, leading to more neural efficiency, more technical efficiency, and increasing your 1RM that much more. So the other half of our GPP work is going to be developing our work capacity. How are we going to develop our work capacity? This can be done a ton of different ways. A lot of it comes down to the science is the compliance, or the compliance is the science, whatever Stan Efferding likes to say. Ultimately, you can have your conjecture about what's the optimal conditioning method for a strength athlete, but if you're not going to do it, it doesn't matter. So picking the one that you enjoy is going to be a lot better than picking the one you feel is optimal and then falling off. It can be done via circuit training. It can be done via HIIT training. It can be done by cross training a different sport. Playing a pickup basketball game can be some of your GPP if you like. It can be done a whole lot of ways, and whatever fits into your model in your head of how your training is structured. If going and training for boxing on the weekends is part of your GPP, and you're actually going to do it, awesome. That might be a little bit of extra joint stress through the wrists, elbows, and shoulders, but you can accommodate for that within your training, and most importantly, you're going to do it. If you enjoy HIIT style workouts, awesome. You're going to do them. Cool, that can be our GPP for developing our work capacity directly. But a lot of the time I find that steady state cardio is something that is not that hard to do and can lead to pretty direct results in terms of your work capacity. If you're not in particularly good shape and walking at 2 miles an hour on a 1 degree incline for 30 minutes is quite difficult for you, and you do that every day or every other day for a while, and you get to the point where you're walking 2.5 miles an hour on a 3 or 4 degree incline, and it's about as hard as that original one was, that is direct measurable improvement in your work capacity and your cardiovascular condition. And I promise you, even something like that would show up in the ability to do more meaningful training. And so that would be the other half of the GPP work, is just trying to develop your work capacity with times via whatever avenue you enjoy. I like steady state cardio myself because I can quantify the improvements in my work capacity pretty easily on a lot of different steady state cardio exercises. Oh, cool, now I can do an hour at X, Y, or Z at this speed when before I was averaging this speed, and it's about the same difficulty. That's measurable progress that I can see. And as far as how to break it up, the bodybuilding stuff, this can be approached different ways. You could either say, okay, well, I've got a strength half of each workout and then a hypertrophy half of each workout. You could take a daily undulating approach and say, okay, well, I've got one day that's more strength focused, one day that's more hypertrophy, GPP, base building focused. You could even, if you realize that you need to put on more muscle, you could have one day where you do some strength and then some hypertrophy, and then one day that's dedicated solely to hypertrophy. You could break that up a whole bunch of different ways, largely just gonna come down to personal preference and trial and erroring what works for you. And then as far as the conditioning, my bias is spreading out your conditioning into smaller bouts is better than putting a ton into longer bouts. So rather than 60 minutes twice a week, I would rather suggest you do 20 minutes every day. You could do 20 minutes every training day, 30 minutes on rest days. I would recommend at least 3 conditioning sessions per week if this is something you're serious about improving, but that would be my general recommendations. I definitely lean towards higher frequencies as long as it's not something that's really taxing on your joints on our work capacity focused training. And if you're someone who's very new to this can be extremely low scale. It actually, to get some of the benefits, if you're going from nothing to something, you can literally spend 10 minutes walking on the treadmill at your gym to get warm for your workout and slowly try to get the incline up and the speed up on that 10-minute walk warm up, and that will be enough done every training day to see some meaningful increases in your work capacity. So I hope you guys liked this video. If you did, you can like, you can comment, and you can subscribe. Those are all options. Thank you for watching.